a degree-granting comprehensive liberal arts education to people who are incarcerated. As our nation reckons with the systemic racism of America's criminal legal system and its pernicious investment in policing, criminalization, and incarceration, our events aim to open space for conversation on these crucial topics and to bridge research, legal work, policy, and community activism in addressing them. I'm especially thrilled to welcome today's speaker, Keith LaMar. Despite seemingly insurmountable obstacles, Keith has found a way to join us today from death row in Ohio. I'm profoundly grateful to Keith for his courage in telling his story and for his generosity in sharing it with us here. So Arturo, if you want to jump in.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks, Jennifer, for kicking off the event. I will be moderating today. And before we get started, I want to give you some administrative notes to keep in mind for our event. So we are recording today's discussion. You won't appear in the recording. Only the speakers will appear. Please
Thank you for
remain
using GTL.
muted throughout the event. You should already be muted. And for Q&A, what we're going to do is keep a queue of questions. So please send your questions via the chat to Sanjana Subramanian, she will be putting a comment in the chat now. You should be able to see it. Send her a message directly and we will keep tally of your questions. If we run out of time and we can't get to your question, we will follow up after the event with a brief document in which Keith will respond to your questions. We'll send that via email. Okay, and now for the format of the discussion, we're going to begin with Keith. He will have 30 minutes of remarks discussing his case and the death penalty, as well as wrongful convictions. Please keep in mind that Keith is calling in 15-minute increments. So we're going to have some gaps in between calls as he switches phones. We will follow up Keith's remarks with a question and answer session in which Keith will respond to previously submitted questions that were prepared by our undergraduate and graduate community at Northwestern. Following that, we'll have about 20 to 25 minutes for open Q&A. So I will remind you throughout the event to submit your questions. You can send them at any point. We'll keep track of them. And now I'm going to introduce our speaker. Keith LaMar is a death row prisoner who was wrongfully convicted in the state of Ohio. On November 16th, 2023, the state intends to execute him, even though he has maintained innocence for nearly 3 decades. All of this while being held in indefinite solitary confinement. Keith is actively engaged in a number of social justice initiatives, including running a nonprofit for youth, public speaking on the criminal legal system, and other related community work. We're so excited to have you here today, Keith. Please get started when you're ready. Thanks.
Thanks, Arturo. Hello, everybody. Hi. As Arturo just mentioned, my name is Keith LaMar. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's always humbling when people come out to hear my truth. I've been going around.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I've been doing these talks for several years now. It's always somewhat unnerving to speak my truth into the void. But Nietzsche, he once said that when you're looking into the void is looking back at you. So even though I can't see your faces, I hope you are looking back at me, that what I'm about to say, resonates in some way inside of you, inside of your life. Early on when I first started talking about my situation, it was almost impossible to get the words out, and then I had to remind myself, though, what I'm talking about is personal to me. It's a whole lot bigger than me, just one individual alone. And, holding that in my mind helps focus me somewhat. It's still nerve-wracking, though. I can never be certain that I'll be able to make it to a phone. The night was, kind of a nail-biter. I got here at the last minute. Here in prison, you don't really have any control over your time. Everything is regulated by somebody else. But I made it. I'm here with you all tonight, and I like to think that that's because what I'm doing cannot be stopped, cannot be resisted. The truth cannot be resisted. So that's how I like to look at it. Again, unfortunately, I can't see any of your faces. I wish I could. I asked my friend Amy to pull up a picture of me standing inside the cell to give you all a sense of who I am and where exactly I'm calling from. If you look closely at the picture, you'll see a painting above the table there to the left. It's a painting that reminds me of the projects where I grew up, the place where I spent my formative years, learning how to be a criminal. I don't look back on these days proudly or fondly. In fact, this is where one of my favorite aunts lived. And the painting is in remembrance of her. Her and I loved each other very much. And so when I look at that painting, I'm reminded of some of my happiest moments in life, even though it was unfolding in a very dark place. If you look by the bed under the window, you'll see another painting of a lion. Lions are my favorite animals, and not just because they're fierce creatures, but because they seem to carry themselves with so much dignity and strength, qualities that I value very much in my own life. This lion's name is Bomani, which is a personal attribute I adopted before I embarked on this almost 30-year stint in solitary confinement. And maybe you can see my books I have there on the shelves. That's my personal library. There's also books under the bed, books in boxes stored away, just books on top of books. And, really these books are my extended family, so to speak. I rely on them. I've relied on them over these many years of being in isolation, and they have kept me on the straight path. And so, they're just more than books to me. I'm not going to ask you all to imagine what living in this space has been like. If I did, I seriously doubt if you could answer me. But if you're wondering how I survived all these years, it's by and through the strength of my imagination. I imagine that all the people who have ever loved me, particularly the people who are no longer here, my grandparents, my mother, my aunt, all the people who love me into being, I imagine them standing on a balcony in some far-off place, praying for me, watching over me, beseeching me to do my very best. And, all my efforts are centered around trying not to let them down. Still, in many ways, being trapped in this small space is like my own little personal hell. It's really difficult to live in these tight quarters. And, I'm a bit claustrophobic. And sometimes when I open my eyes in the morning, it feels like I'm trapped inside a coffin. And I have to remind myself to breathe. Breathe peace. This has also been the place of my greatest growth. I'm getting a little emotional now because whenever I talk about the situation, I think about my younger self entering into this place where I didn't really have the resources that I have now, personal and otherwise. But
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
But yeah, this has been the place of my greatest growth. I've learned so many things inside this small room. Most importantly, how to forgive and love myself. Both very hard things for me to do. I taught myself how to write here, how to meditate, and basically how to tolerate myself. And as some of you have recently found out, 24 hours a day by yourself is not an easy thing to do. Last year when the first stay-at-home orders were being issued, I did an interview with Mother Jones about how best to navigate isolation. And a lot of people seem to respond to that. The great takeaway of this experience is that as human beings, we need other human beings in order to survive. And that's because we're social beings, which is why solitary confinement is considered cruel and unusual punishment. And that's just after 3 days. The courts ruled that 72 hours, anything over 72 hours is considered cruel and unusual. And I just want you to keep that in mind when I tell you that I've been in this situation for 28 years. It was pretty sad, right? You know, this is the part, where I'm supposed to pull up the picture of me when I was a little boy. That's what I used to do early on. I just pull up the picture of me as a little boy, as a way to elicit sympathy. But I've decided that I don't want or need anybody's sympathy anymore. I don't need people to feel sorry for me. What I need is your understanding. I need you to understand. So instead of pulling up my grammar school photo, I thought I'd pull up another picture, one that's more in keeping with the topic of conversation. So take a look at it. Pretty gruesome stuff, right? Yeah, well, here's the part where I'm supposed to tell you that I'm innocent and that what is happening in this picture shouldn't happen to me. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not innocent. I haven't been innocent in a very long time. I mean, it's true that I'm not guilty of the crimes for which I was sentenced to death, and I can prove that. But this experience has completely robbed me of my innocence. I'm no longer...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
The situation has completely stripped me of my innocence. I'm no longer that naive, gullible person I was 28 years ago. Experience has taught me, and I've learned, I've seen things. And I know that those men are hanging not because of something they've done, but because of something they are. To the people who are looking at them, pointing at them, laughing at them, they are not human beings. I have this picture sitting on my bookshelf here, and I look at it every day, every morning. It took me some time for me to understand what I was looking at, though. First, I wondered what the two men could have possibly done. And then, looking at the woman laughing right there in the foreground, I decided that this picture had nothing to do with justice. Justice, when it's real, is no laughing matter. My grandfather taught me that. The few times he'd taken his belt to my behind in order to teach me a hard lesson about life. He had tears in his eyes. So if this picture is not about justice, then what is it then? I tell you what it is. It's blindness. You see, the people doing the pointing and laughing can't see that by dehumanizing these men, they have in fact dehumanized themselves in the process. As human beings, we have access to that which is sacred, to that which is entitled to reverence and respect. And yet when we violate the sanctity of our humanity, the sanctity of our system, we lose the right to be respected. Needless to say, I don't respect this system or the people who run it. And I say that respectfully. As far as I'm concerned, they have been totally discredited. And the point, at least for me, in having these conversations, is not really to convince you that of these things. If what happened to George...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I'm not calling to convince you of anything. If what happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor over the summer didn't open your eyes, then there's no words I can provide that would do that. The fact that you are on this call hopefully means that you have already seen enough. I know I have. And I'm interested in exploring ways in which we can come together and change things. As I said, I'm not interested in participating in a pity party, especially if I'm the one being pitied. I have enough of that. The way I see it, if I'm not working towards achieving the world that I want to live in, then there's no point in living. I'll never go back to who I was. If someone came to me and asked me to trade in everything I've achieved over these past 28 years for my freedom, I would flat out refuse that offer. I would refuse. See, I used to believe that what I had was more important than who I was, than who I am. I don't believe that anymore. I know the truth now. So now that we have an understanding, I'll let you see the picture of me when I was a little boy. Don't laugh, though. Don't laugh at me. Yeah. I'm right now working on my autobiography. So this little boy and I have been spending a lot of time together lately. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to get him to trust me again. Begging him to believe in me again. But you know, it's a hard sell, though. You see, when I was around 13, I kicked this little boy to the curb and went in search of the American dream. You know, clothes, cars, jewelry. And by the time I caught up with him again, I was sitting in the cell on death row. So you can see why he would be upset with me. But the pages are starting to pour out, which I take as a sign that he is coming around. And I'm extremely glad about that. I mean, I should probably stop talking about myself in the third person. I'm sure that sounds crazy.
You have 1 minute remaining.
But suffice it to say, I'm working on myself. I'm working very hard on myself. I'm working very hard on cultivating my voice so that I can tell my story as I've lived it, as I feel it. You know, I want to when I call back, I want to tell you all a little bit about my case and about how I got to where I am now. But I just wanted to first establish an understanding with you all so you all can have a sense of what I'm about and what I'm trying to do with my life. I'm trying to do something righteous with my life. And you know, my hope is that at the end of this exchange, you'll help me do that. So I'll call back and we'll talk a little bit about my case and how I got to where I am now. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for using GTL.
Hi, everyone. So just a reminder that we'll have some time in between calls as Keith gets onto another line. We'll use this time to remind you to submit your questions. So Sanjana, as a reminder, Sanjana Subrahmyan, she is in the chat. She'll receive your question and you can add your questions to the queue. So we have a queue going already. Feel free to send them as things come up.
And we also wanted to remind you that if we don't have time to get to your question during the Q&A, we will send those questions to Keith and he will prepare answers and will circulate an email with his answers after the event.
Thank you for using GTL. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I want to tell you all a little about my case, where I am now, how I wound up on death row, and what I've been trying to do to avoid being lynched. I'm not being dramatic in using that word. Right now here in Ohio, the drugs needed for lethal injection have been withheld by various drug companies. And they're debating on going back to some other form of execution. In fact, as part of a class action lawsuit that was recently filed by a group of defense attorneys here, the courts mandated that each death row prisoner must select his own preferred method of execution. I'm not joking. From my own attorneys, I received a packet of information detailing the various modes of death, which included instructions on how to tie a noose. It's from my own attorneys, the very people on whom I'm relying to fight for my life. They didn't seem to appreciate my anger when I expressed my discontent, but I let them know that I would not be participating in such craziness and demanded that I be removed from the suit. But imagine it, though, a smorgasbord of executions. But back to my case, because don't get me started.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Go off on a tangent talking about these court-appointed attorneys. You know, because theoretically they work for you, but in reality they are being paid by the state, so essentially they work for the state. And though they might be filing motions on your behalf. Those motions are not meant or designed to challenge your conviction. They're meant to get you to the gurney intact. It's a little off track of what I want to talk about tonight, but I just want people to understand that when you pour in this country, you really up shit's creek. Maybe we'll talk about that later on, but you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about my book. I wrote a book called Condemned, where I narrate every detail of this nightmare I'm talking about that I'm trying to describe. You know, obviously it's too much material to cover over the phone. You know, so for those of you who would like to take a deeper dive, you know, the book is there for you. Information on how to order it should be floating across the screen now. And I must warn you, though, it's not a New York Times bestseller. It's not one of those books you can sit down with in a cozy chair and be comfortable. It's a very uncomfortable book. Uncomfortable because we talking about hell, what goes on in hell. What goes on when people are being tortured, when people are being oppressed. So it's not one of those books you could sit down and relax with. And I meant to write it in that way because I don't want you to be relaxed. When you read it, I want you to, you know, to be angry about it. Just to be angry that these things are actually happening to another human being. So yeah, okay. In 1993, there was a riot inside the prison where I was doing my time, the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility, or SOCF is what it's called. But you know, before I came to prison, I've been a drug dealer in one of the most drug-infested areas in Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I'm from, Cleveland. In one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the city, I was driving around in a Mercedes-Benz, draped in jewelry with a pocket full of money. You know, one day a group of guys kicked my door in with plans on robbing me, and bullets were exchanged. I've asked Amy to pull up the picture of the apartment where it all went down. And I want you all to have a picture in your mind as I'm talking about these things. From my understanding, the picture that we have is a little grainy. I had a friend go by this apartment building just a few days ago. And this was 30 years since I've been here, but take a look at it. I moved in this place when I was 15 years old on my own. Third floor to the left. I nearly lost my life in that place. I was shot twice, and 2 bullets from my gun struck one of the robbers in the chest. He and I lay side by side in the operating room together. And I was so close to where he was lying that I heard the doctors when they pronounced him dead. You know, after all was said and done, I was sent to prison to serve a 15 years to life sentence for murder. And I only tell you about these things because the sentence that I received play a big part in where I am today. I was in about my 4th year of my sentence when the riot occurred.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
It was April 1993. It was the beginning of spring. You know, we had all been cooped up over the winter months. You know, we wasn't allowed to go outside, so everybody, you know, the energy was pent up, and we was ready to get outside to get some fresh air again. Around this time, the administration were administering annual tuberculosis tests. But the problem arose when Muslim inmates who are prohibited from ingesting alcohol refused to take the shot. Apparently, the serum that was being used contained an alcoholic substance called phenol. I've since learned. And they tried to meet with the warden and suggest an alternative means to find out whether or not they were effective or not. And the warden, this guy named Arthur Tate was his name. You know, a real hard ass. You know, he gave them an ultimatum. He told them to take the test or be thrown in a hole. But instead of taking the test, the Muslims took over the prison. When the smoke cleared, 11 prisoners and 1 guard had been killed. But so here I want to just make a few important points. It was said, first of all, it was said that three gangs presided over the riot: the Muslims, the Aryan Brotherhoods, and the Black Angel Disciples. And it's important to point this out because later on I will be accused of being the leader of one of these gangs. I've never been in a gang in my life. Never been in a gang. And I was on the recreation yard when the riot happened. I had went in briefly to check on my property, but once it didn't take me long to figure out that this was something of great seriousness, and I came back out onto the yard. I was on the yard when the dead bodies started to pile up. I was watching in disbelief along with everybody else. And then when it was all over, the state. This is also another important thing I want to put out there. You know, when it was over with, when the riot came to an end, the state rushed into the building. They trampled the crime scene. Over 22,000 pieces of evidence was collected and sent to the crime lab, and none of it came back matching any would-be assailant or victim. My name was later mentioned after I was placed in a cell with 9 other naked and hungry prisoners, where a man named Dennis Weaver was killed. When investigators tried to interrogate us, I refused to talk. As was obvious, snitches get killed in prison. Not long after that, I was said to have been the leader of this group I just mentioned. You know, the state dubbed them the Death Squad, who, according to them, was responsible for 4 other deaths. So things are looking pretty bad for me now. I nearly had a nervous breakdown trying to wrap my mind around what was happening to me. But I found out later why I had been singled out. Since I'd already been doing life, but with the possibility of parole, the state assumed I would buckle under and take a deal. That way they could clean their books and be done with the whole thing. They never expected me to actually go to trial. On the eve of trial, in fact, they came to me with a plea bargain. They told me if I copped out to murder, they'd run the time with the time I was already doing. It'd be like you're getting off scot-free, Keith, they told me. They called me by my name, Keith, like we were old buddies, you know. But, I've been dealing with the criminal justice system since I was 13 years old, so I knew what that was about. And I knew that, despite this sweet talk, that if I pled guilty to murder, that the parole board would never let me go home. And by then, I had found my way back to myself. I came into prison when I was 19 years old. And by the time the riot happened, I was 23, about to turn 24 years old. And I had covered a lot of ground since then. When I came to prison, I got my GED, I enrolled in college, but more important than any of that, I met some guys who mentored me. And they helped me find my way back to myself. And so when these people came to me and asked me to cop out to something I didn't do, I almost did it. Because when you poor in this country, you know what it is. You know it ain't about whether or not you're guilty or innocent. It's about you not having the money to pursue this. And they spelled that out to me in no uncertain terms. When I proclaim my innocence, I said, come on, Keith. We're not here for that. And that pissed me off, though, that they could take for granted that I would just ball my life up and throw it away. I already did that. And so I said, no, I'm going to trial. And I had it in my mind that a jury of my peers would be able to hear this evidence, and I would be exonerated. I mean, I knew evidence existed of my innocence. I knew there were statements that pointed the finger at other people, but I didn't have them, though. And the state didn't turn them over when I went.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
One of my main issues is their refusal to turn over exculpatory evidence. That's evidence that proved my innocence. They refuse to turn any of that over. When you read the book, you'll see the game that they played, and I haven't spoken to one attorney that has told me they have ever seen anything like it. You know, and I knew that, you know, there were statements out there, and I hoped that the truth would come out, and it did. But by the time it did, I was already on death row. You see, one of the games that they played when I filed a motion for discovery, they gave my evidence to another prisoner, gave his evidence to me. So by the time we got on death row, all 5 of us, because 5 of us was ultimately sentenced to death, we started combing through our legal work, through our files, and realized that, hey, I got a statement over here that pertains to you. And that's how we started piecing it together. And one of the statements that was given to me while I was on death row was from an actual perpetrator from the gang, the Black Gangster Disciples, who came forward and admitted that he killed somebody from whom I was sentenced to death. His name is Aaron Jefferson. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It's over like a 100-page statement. And he admitted flat out with no discrepancies, I did this. And not only that, there's other statements with other people who witnessed him doing this. And then some of the star witnesses who testified with me, who swore under oath that they was telling the truth, I found out later through these statements that trickled in over time that they was lying. And that the initial statements, they said they had never saw me. I needed these statements in order to prove my innocence, and they withheld them. They withheld them, and they knew that by the time I discovered them, I had already been on death row for 10, 20 years, and that was the case. In 2017, I got an evidentiary hearing, which is a rare thing, I was told. I went back to court, and we put the prosecutor on the stand and asked him why he didn't turn over this evidence. And it was later decided that he had used a narrow standard to determine what constituted Brady material. And everybody but me benefited from his assertions. All the other attorneys, all the other guys that's on death row were sitting in the...
You have 1 minute remaining.
All the other attorneys, and they immediately filed motions based on what the prosecutor divulged. Everybody was shocked that he had made these admissions. But my attorneys, for some reason, didn't capitalize on it, and I was the only one left out of the loop. My attorney sold me out. I write about that in the book, the whole process, word for word. But, you know, I'm learning as I go along, so hindsight was 20/20. But I put it in the pages, though, because it's not over for me. I refuse to give up. You know, so that's really where I'm at, how I arrived to where I am today in my legal situation. As far as my advocacy is concerned, we can talk about that definitely. But like I said, if anybody want to take a deeper dive into the book is there. And the statements are supported, you know, the things that I'm saying in the book are substantiated by statements. It's not just me actually.
Thank you for using GTL.
Hi, everyone. So while Keith changes lines, I think what we'll do is we'll allow him to finish his remarks, and then we're going to transition into the planned Q&A. Jennifer Leckie will be calling on the people reading the questions. As a reminder, these questions are submitted from our undergraduate and graduate Northwestern community members. So Keith should be on in just a few seconds. Another quick reminder, keep sending your questions. We have a queue going. Please send your questions to Sanjana Subramaniam. She will be noting them here, and we will be reading these in the subsequent portion of the event.
So as soon as Keith returns, I'll pivot to the prepared discussion questions. We will let those run about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll move directly to audience Q&A, even if we don't make it through all of the prepared discussion questions.
Go ahead.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready now. I think we should do it.
Okay, Keith, thank you. Okay, so for the first question will be read by Isabella Reed. Can you unmute yourself and read the question, please?
Yes. In the postscript, you write that you were humbled by how many people came to bear witness at your 2014 appeal. At points throughout, you also seem to frame the book itself as a means for readers to bear witness to your story, even if they are ultimately unable to change its outcome. Can you talk a little about the practice of bearing witness and what it means to you?
Yeah. Well, in my mid-20s, shortly before I was sentenced to death, a good friend of mine taught me how to meditate, how to calm the storms that were always raging inside my mind. As you can imagine, going through something like this, I was full of emotion, most of it angry emotions. I was upset a lot. And in those days, I was my own worst enemy, I would say. Always reacting, and in many cases, overreacting to things. But when I learned how to meditate, I learned how to slow my life down, how to step outside of cause and effect, and in that way became a witness.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I mean, it may sound like a paradoxical thing to say, but to fully engage with yourself and whatever circumstances you might be dealing with, you have to establish a certain distance from things and learn how to live from a place of remove, to be in it, but not of it, so to speak. And that was hard. That was a hard thing for me to learn. At the beginning of my book, there's a poem by Claude McKay called Baptism, which is how I eventually came to see this experience as a kind of initiation into a higher understanding of what it means to be a human being. The first few lines of the poem are, "Into the furnace, let me go alone. Stay you without in terror of the heat. I will go naked in, for dust is sweet, into the weird depths of the hottest zone." So, in writing the book, I wanted you to read it, to stay without, to stand at a place of remove and ponder that what you are about to read really happened. At the end of the day, we have to decide what kind of world we want to live in, right? What kind of people we want to be. And that work begins with being a witness. We're actually looking at the world instead of simply staring at it. So that's what I mean by that. We have to look at this world, and because we say we want peace and equality, but we say those things as knee-jerk. We're not really looking at, whether or not our actions meet our ambitions or what we claim to believe in, and that's a problem. So, first we have to be able to bear witness, and then figure out where and when to enter, and be courageous enough to step out, to act. That's where that comes from. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Keith. The next question will be read by Tara Tolner. If you could unmute yourself.
Sure. The second question is, how do you think you managed to show such resilience and tenacity in the face of such unbelievably difficult circumstances? What internal resources?
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Yeah, people ask me this a lot. I read a lot. I've read quite a few books, probably 1,000 books in 28 years. I'm sure over 1,000 books. I know that this planet is over 4 billion years old. That dinosaurs once roamed on this planet, creatures taller than 4-story buildings, and and I know that those creatures had to die in order so that we might come into existence. And I know something, a little something about what that long and miraculous process was about. I know about slavery, about the Middle Passage, and about the hard choices that my ancestors had to make in order to bring me into being. I know about the Holocaust. I really learned a lot from reading. Learned a lot about my own situation from reading books about the Holocaust, books by Primo Levi, by I can't recall my other friend's name, Viktor Frankl. He was also a Holocaust survivor. And so I learned about, the 6 million Jews who were gassed in concentration camps. I know about the mass extermination of indigenous people in this country, the long trail of tears. And so this is what I draw on, the fact that life isn't meant to be fair, but meant to be lived. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel sorry for myself. I'm not here for that. I'm here to live my life, to report truly what I see and feel. I mean, you call it resilience, tenacity. Okay, I won't disagree with you. But I call it living. That's all I'm really trying to do. Live my one and only life. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. The next question will be asked by Anna.
Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for this talk. It's been incredibly powerful. So I have a question here that asks, can you talk about your journey from believing
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Anna, do you want to ask it again?
Yeah. Can you talk about your journey from believing the criminal justice system was just when you made the decision to go to trial to 16 years later, finally understanding that it was never about justice? How do you feel about the growing movement for prison and police abolition in the United States?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like all of us, obviously I'm very upset about my experience, but it's not a unique experience. Anybody have had experience of the criminal justice system, particularly if they poor, they know of what I speak. But I grew up just like everybody else, pledging allegiance to the flag and singing "My Country 'Tis a Thee." I remember singing that when I was in elementary school. My country 'tis a thee, and all of that. So I'm saying I'm an American through and through, as American as apple pie, as they say. But I think we all know that there's two Americas, one for the rich and one for the poor. So that means two justice systems, two healthcare systems, so on and so forth, right? And the determining factor of your experience when you enter into these places is how much money you have at your disposal. I believe it was Brian Stevenson who said, in speaking about the criminal justice system, that it's better to be rich and guilty than innocent and poor. And he was telling the truth about that. I was still a child in my understanding 26 years ago when I was wrongfully accused and sentenced to death. I just turned 25 years old. And I know now that as a 25-year-old, I'm still technically an adolescent. My prefrontal cortex hasn't fully developed, so I couldn't really see the big picture as I see it right now. Before I went to trial, as I said, they offered me a deal. They wanted me to plead guilty and then run the time concurrent. I didn't even know what the word concurrent meant. I said, what's it mean? What that mean? And he said, well, you're getting off scot-free. We just need you to plead guilty. Sign here. I said, but I'm innocent, though. He said, well, we didn't come here to talk about that, Keith. And that was my first encounter with the other America when I, tried to assert my rights, when I was thinking about that innocent until proven bullshit we always hear about. They wanted me to know that didn't apply to me. And, I was still young and dumb enough, to believe that a jury of my peers would see it differently. It turned out that my peers turned out to be an all-white jury who, unbeknownst to me at the time, had already made their own deal with the powers that be. You see, this is, the thing that we as a society don't really want to talk about. I mean, we talk about privilege, about implicit bias, but only in the abstract. We don't talk about what any of it means in concrete terms. I mean, like, for instance, how a group of armed white people could rush the Capitol without the fear of being massacred. Or in the case of Breonna Taylor, how white people go to bed every night without the fear of being murdered in their sleep. When I talk about this with some of my white friends, and here they raise the question, you know what, well, I'm not rich. And I have to explain to them that what I'm talking about is a psychological wage. The peace of mind that comes from, that you can walk down the street without worrying about being killed. Or if you're in prison, you can worry about coming. You don't have to worry about when you go on a visit to be with your family that one of these COs
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
No, and it still translates over here, over to prison too. If you're a poor white guy in prison, you can go on a visit and not worried about one of these COs putting your toothbrush in the toilet. I've had that done to me several times. And it's just the price of doing time as a black man in this country. And what I mean by doing time, I just mean just walking on this planet. So yeah, we could talk about abolishing prisons and get rid of the police. I love to take part in that conversation. But first we had to ask ourselves why police and prisons exist in the first place, and whether they are causes or effects. I mean, we're told that they have something to do with crime, right? But what crime? In the same breath, we're told that we live in the richest country in the world. And yet we know that those riches rest with a very small group of people. And we need to ask ourselves, is that the crime that nobody wants to talk about? This unequal distribution of wealth? I'm not a Marxist or anything like that, but I've read Karl Marx, and he has a lot to say about this. I'm just a high school dropout, who loves to read. So, don't rely on anything I'm telling you. But I'm saying if I can see and understand these things, if I can see and understand the connections, then so can you. And I believe many of you do know about these things. And I think Uptown Sinclair was right when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said it's hard to get people to understand something that their privilege is against them understanding. I mean, here we are right now in the middle of a pandemic. Over 400,000 people have died. And life is once again asking us, when are we going to find our way to a human path? When are we going to inform our conduct with a deeper sense of what's real and right? And it's telling us, it's showing us that if we can't get our shit together, then all of us, black as well as white, are going down the same drain. And I'm paraphrasing Richard Wright when I say that. So yeah, we can have that conversation, but be sure that when you have that conversation, you also try to see the ways in which you yourself have been complicit.
Thank
And
you.
it's not a matter of trying to make you feel guilty, make you feel convicted. It's just a matter of you open your eyes and understanding that if I die, you're going to die too. If I'm not cured of the virus, that means you can't be cured of it. We all connected. And, the picture that I pulled up at the beginning of this conversation, at the beginning of this change, and the white people stand at those black men hanging in the trees, the thing that I wanted to get across, that they didn't even see that was themselves hanging up there. So that's the thing that we have to come to the realization first, that how are we implicit, and are we willing to, give us the little niceties that these people have given us to bribe us, to keep us from coming together. In the 1600s at Jamestown, white people and black people and indigenous people came together, and they burned Jamestown down. But shortly after that, I think in the 1600s, 1650s, that the word white first entered the legal lexicon. That wasn't the thing. That's a made-up thing.
You have 1 minute remaining.
There's no such thing as white people.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I'm sorry, I know that was a little long-winded, but this is something that I think a lot about. And I hope other people think a lot about this, because we have to somehow put our heads together to change these things. So I hope that answers your question. I'll call back.
Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's about to cut off. I'll call right back, Amy.
Thank you for using GTL.
Hi, everyone. So given the time that we have, I think it might be best to turn to the Q&A from our audience today. So we'll wait for Keith to jump in, and I'll read the first question to you. Sanjana is still taking questions.
May I, Arturo, may I?
Yeah, of course.
I think if it's okay, he has a couple other questions that I think he'd like to answer. Is it a problem?
I can go through.
I mean, he can stay on longer if he needs to. If you're able to keep him on longer, we can stay a little longer. I don't know if he's coming up.
I'm happy. We can run through a couple more of the prepared discussion questions. I think that we should pick up the pace a little bit because we have, I think, four or five more. So if we could just, kind of go through those. Arturo, I'm happy to then pivot to the general Q&A a little bit late in maybe 10 minutes.
Yep, that sounds good to me. And I think Keith is back on the line. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, great, Keith. Thank you. We have about 5 more prepared discussion questions, so we'll try to maybe work through those within 10 to 15
I'll
minutes.
try to be a little bit more succinct, okay?
It's fine. John, can you go ahead and ask question 4, please?
Absolutely. Hi, Keith. In the last chapter,
How you doing?
you write that you decided you would not go quietly into that dark night and instead find a way to rise to the occasion and write your story. Can you talk more about what went into your decision to write this book and how the process of writing it shaped you?
Thanks, John. Writing Condemned was basically my Declaration of Independence. I had went through this whole process, and I was constantly being told by my attorneys, by the judge, by the prosecutor, by the warden, by the guards, to sit back and keep my mouth shut. And I followed their advice, and I ended up on death row, and I ended up in solitary confinement. And on top of that, I went 18 years without being able to touch my family. And it wasn't until I took my life into my own hands that my life actually began to change. I went on a hunger strike back in 2011, and after, going through 8 years of litigation trying to get the courts to rule in my favor to allow me to touch my family, I went on a hunger strike and achieved in 12 days what I couldn't achieve in all that time. So that taught me something. It taught me that in order for things to change, I have to figure out a way to utilize my own agency. And so writing the book was my, Declaration of Independence that I'm making the choices from here on out.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I've been relying on the system to, bring a favorable ruling, and it hasn't come, and it won't come. And so this is why this is why I wrote the book, and this is why I'm speaking to you right now. This is me speaking up for myself. This is me utilizing my own agency. So that was the whole point of the book. And writing it, how the process changed me when it was complete, when I had the book in my hands. And I could put it on my bookshelf as a real thing. It gave me the courage and confidence I needed to continue fighting. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Arturo, if you could ask question number 5.
Yeah. So question number 5 says, what has the response been to Condemned since it's been published? Do you feel that readers are heeding your call to, quote, let the truth set them free and demand that justice be done?
Well, last we checked, and we checked a few days ago, I think it was 2,300 copies of the book in circulation. And, that's not a huge amount, especially compared to a New York Times bestseller. But I'm proud of it, though. The book I taught myself how to write sits on my bookshelf between Richard Wright and James Baldwin, two of my literary heroes. So that makes me proud. As far as people heeding the call, there's a lot of good people in my life who wasn't here before the book was written. And our hope is that the book is picked up by a mainstream publisher so we can reach a wider readership. I hope that happens. But just writing the book and as I said, having it in my hand as a real thing, really changed the way I see life. It made me believe that if I apply myself, that I can do something righteous with my time, that I can do something righteous with my life, and it was the very thing that I needed to happen in my life at that precise moment. Walt Whitman, in one of his poems, he said, "If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each and all be aware, I sit content. One world is aware, by far the largest to me, and that is myself." So that book was for myself. I didn't know that the 2,300 copies would be in circulation. I didn't know that, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, that I'd be on the phone talking to students at Northwestern. I didn't know that. You can't know those things.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
That's what faith is. You act when there's no evidence that your actions would prove fruitful. So I just had faith, and it kind of confirmed my faith and encouraged me to continue having faith, to continue believing in myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Olivia, can you ask the next question?
Could you talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected your life in prison, and any effect it's had on your case, if there has been one?
Well, personally speaking, I never thought I would have anything good to say about solitary confinement, but being in solitary has somewhat shielded me from the virus, at least the worst of it. There's been a few outbreaks here where I am, but nothing major compared to, at least not compared to other prisons. In other prisons, there's been, huge outbreaks. A number of guards have died. A number of inmates have died. I think one guard has died where I am. The National Guard was called in recently to kind of fill in for the guards who were out sick, whether they would be in quarantine or contracted the virus themselves. But nothing really major. No one in the area where I'm housed has come down with the virus. So I've been lucky in that regard. My uncle caught the virus, and I think my niece had the virus, but they made it through intact, and I was very glad about that. But I'm not complaining or anything. I know that the virus is, I believe that the virus is real, unlike some people, and I'm doing everything in my power to kind of protect myself, and I hope people out there are doing the same. I mean, this is a real thing. This is life speaking to us, telling us something, and I think we should listen. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Taylor, can you ask the next question?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and hi, Keith. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel simultaneously heartbroken and inspired, and yeah, the way you've taken your experience and made something to inspire all of us is amazing, and I'm so thankful to be here. But I know you've already touched on. Yeah, thank you. I know you've already touched on McKay and Whitman, but this question is, could you talk more about different authors and activists who have inspired you in your own writing and activism, and whether there might be particular works that stand out to you that you'd recommend?
Sure. Well, I've already mentioned Richard Wright and James Baldwin, as you said. A few years back, I started a literacy project to send some of my favorite books into juvenile facilities.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
To send some of my books into juvenile facilities, and I named that project Native Sons after Richard Wright. He, I would say, has had the biggest impact on my life as a writer, and maybe even as a human being. I mean, he was so brilliant, and just reading his book over and over again is how I learned how to write. Even before I knew what a semicolon was, I knew how to use it from reading Native Son, from reading Black Boy by Richard Wright, and of course James Baldwin has been a big influence. What a great mind he had, and there's so many other people. Toni Morrison is a favorite. Alice Walker is a favorite. But I have to tell you, no book has had a greater impact as far as my personal situation goes than this book called Nothing But an Unfinished Song by Dennis O'Hearn. It's a book about a group of Irish prisoners who undertook a hunger strike to protest against the dehumanizing conditions that they were being subjected to. Reading this book left a marked impression on me, and was really the motivating factor behind my going on a hunger strike in 2011, which I write about and condemn, and which led to my being allowed to hug and hold my family again after 18 years. So, Nothing But an Unfinished Song, that book has been one of my favorites, and Dennis, incidentally, has become one of my closest friends. After I read his book, I wrote him a letter just thanking him because I was so inspired, and I knew that my life was about to change. And he wrote me back, and we've been friends. We've been the best of friends over the past decade, along with his wife, Bill Gay. Yeah, so, yeah, I asked my friend Amy to compile a small list of some of my favorite books that I'm reading. You know, I have books all over the place in the cell, but I keep the books that I'm reading presently in a box right by my bed, and so these titles come out of that box, and you know, I hope you all will enjoy reading some of these books. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Keith. Yeah, we're seeing everything on the screen, including the wonderful picture of you picking up your niece. Yeah, it's a great picture. The last question comes from Sanjana. The last prepared question comes from Sanjana.
Hi, Keith. Thanks again for sharing your story. It's inspiring to hear you speak and listen to your performance, perseverance, and resolve in such a difficult situation. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to hear you speak and talk to you today. My question is, Condemned has one of the longest, most detailed acknowledgement sections I've ever seen. Could you talk about what your community and relationships have meant to you during your time in prison, and especially in solitary confinement? How can those of us on the outside do a better job of supporting people in prison?
Yeah, I love this question. You know, people always telling me or compliment me on my perseverance. But I owe that to all the people who are in my life, really. You know, as I referenced earlier, you know, to be a human being, you have to be around other human beings. You have to be caught up in a circle of love. And, you know, you see how guys suffer when that's not the case in this situation. You know, I've been around quite a few individuals who have taken their lives. You know, some of whom were very close to me. And the thing that all those guys had in common is that they didn't have this circle of love. And so I've been extremely lucky in that regard. But yeah, that's been the main thing. You need people in your life who are going to be there for you, people with whom you can test your reality and find a way forward. You know, we're talking about the book Condemned. My friend Amy, who's been helping me put the pictures up tonight, you know, she's an English teacher, and she the one really kind of kept, you know, nudging me to write the book. You got to write this story. You got to write it. I made a small attempt in a little pamphlet, but she said, you got to expand on this. You got to do it. And finally I did it, and she committed to helping me do that. And so for 8 months, you know, I used to call her between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning every day without fail. And I used to read to her what I've written over the previous night, and she used to patiently type everything up. And, you know, after 8 months, we had a book, you know, and we're still friends. Lori Swain, she put together the documentary. Her and Barbara Wolf rode all over Ohio doing interviews. You know, I have a friend in England named Jackie, and she's, you know, probably invested a small fortune sending me books, you know, helping finance my education, as she would say. And so, yeah.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Not just my immediate family, but people from all over the world. And again, you know, to be a human being, you need other human beings. You can't be a human being by yourself. You know, as for how to better support people in prison, I think a good place to start is coming to the realization that we're all doing.
You have 1 minute remaining.
I mean, we can't always see the bars around us, but they're there in the various constructs that keep us separated from each other, race, gender, class, or whatever, you know, and we should be trying to break away from these things because they're holding us back from realizing the full scope of our humanity. And it's not really a matter about inside or outside, you know. You know, the fact of the matter is that we're all floating around on this planet. We're all in this together, so we should try to cultivate some compassion and empathy, stop feeling sorry for each other, start feeling sorry with each other, start helping each other get free. I'm saying that kind of fast. I hope you caught what I was saying. But yeah, that's what I think that's needed. We just have to, just take the risk to love each other. And I think that'll make a big difference. A big difference. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Very welcome.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you for using GTL.
Okay, hi everyone. So while we wait for Keith to come back on, we will have Mayor Yaboa jump in and share some slides and information on Keith's projects.
Thanks, Arturo. I'm just going to quickly show his book here, Condemned, and encourage all of you. Thanks so much for joining the call. If you've not purchased his book and read it, I highly, highly recommend. His writing is beautiful and very powerful and convicting, and it will really bring life to you. I encourage you to do that. And I'm going to hand it over to Amy, who will talk a little bit more about other ways you can get involved.
Amy, are you there?
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in for Amy, and if she jumps on the line, she can help out. But there's a number of different ways you can get involved.
And recording. Thank you for using GTL.
So I think since Keith is still with us on the good phone line, if we could go into the audience questions now, the Q&A, and then we'll do the ways to get involved at the very end. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll turn it over to Arturo and Sanjana with the audience Q&A.
Okay, so what we'll do as a reminder, I'm going to read the questions, keep sending them in, and Sanjana will cue them for us. So Keith, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay, Arturo.
Okay, so this is the first question. It says, I am advocating for my husband who was wrongfully convicted 11 years ago serving life without parole. What would be the most important thing you would tell loved ones on the outside that can help us to help who we are fighting for?
I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Because I know from my own experience that your family, having a loved one in prison is a very painful experience, especially when that someone is on death row and their life is being threatened. And so the experience I've had with my family is that they have been somewhat distanced, my immediate family. And I suspect that that's because they don't want to be hurt, that it's too painful. But you need your family. When I was growing up, family was a real important thing. When my grandmother and my grandparents were alive, and my whole family used to meet over my grandparents' house.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
And, those times represent some of my fondest memories, some of my sweetest memories when we were all together. And I wish it was like that now, but it's not. But I continue trying to have it that way. I continue trying to reach out to my loved ones, and I think that's the thing that you have to sit down and remind them of that we need each other. In this situation, without your family's love and support, it's real difficult. As I mentioned earlier, I've seen quite a few guys give up the ghost because they didn't have their family around them. And if your family don't believe you, why should anybody else believe you? That's what people suspect. Where's your family? I've been lucky in the sense that, my uncle especially, and my aunts, and I have a lot of family support, but my uncle especially, he's very close, he and I, and he comes to visit me every month, and just having him to talk to, having him to reassure me, just stay strong, nephew, gives me what I need to just keep going. And so it's very important. I think you need to, make your family understand that this is important. I know that it wasn't in the cards that, your husband would be in prison, but life happens, shit happens, but he's still on planet Earth. And that means that, he can be reached. and people should reach out to him. And so I hope that you make that plea and ask people to live up to what family is all about. That's what has to happen. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Keith. So we'll go on to the next question. This one says, we understand that raising money for your cause and legal defense fund is of utmost importance. How can we help you in your daily life and cause? Are you able to receive letters or books? Do you have any advice or action items for those of us who want to become more involved in fighting for justice for individuals whom the system has wronged?
Yeah, I can receive letters. I can receive books, paperback books. I can ask my friend Amy to put my contact information up on the screen. And I welcome all the love and support that I've been getting. As predicted, the people here have figured out a way to disrupt to disturb my groove, so to speak. I sent out for a new tablet on which I send emails back and forth to my family and friends. And while I'm waiting on that, they shut down my ability to send emails out on the copy. But yeah, write me, even if it has to be snail mail, and I'll respond. I try to respond to all the letters. I get quite a few letters, and from students especially. I get letters, group letters from young people, and I'm always happy about that. I'm always happy to engage with them. Write me, of course, write me. I look forward to it. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. And maybe if it's appropriate, we can send your contact info with the document we'll be following up the event with, so people have the information there as well.
Cool.
Okay, so the next question here says, what is the status of your case as of now? Are there any remaining avenues for appeal?
Well, my appeals have been exhausted, technically. I'm at the end of the road.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Which is why they issued an execution date. But everybody who has made it off of death row, whenever you see someone after 30 years walking through the prison gates and hugging their family, they have been exactly where I am now. So there's still hope. The motion that I need to file in the course is called an actual innocence claim. I've been beseeching my attorneys to help me file this claim, but up until now, and especially since the pandemic, they have found a reason not to do that. And so I need new attorneys. I really do. I've lost faith in the present attorneys that I have, and whenever I reach out to a different organization specialize in helping guys in my situation, the first thing they do is reach out to my attorneys, because that's the decorum demands that they do that. But I never hear from them again. And so what I'm doing now, I'm trying to put forth motions to have these attorneys removed from my case. They're probably listening to this exchange I'm having right now, so it won't be a surprise to them when I send. I've already drafted the letters, and I'm just waiting on a little more advice and information before I actually pull the trigger on that. But yeah, I'm trying to clear the way to make room for somebody new to come into my life, somebody that's willing to help me fight. And but I'm not discouraged from about being where I am. Everybody who has been exonerated has been exactly in this spot, and so I'm here, and I'm just waiting on the weapons that I need to fight this battle that I'm facing. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. So we'll move on to the next question. Do you think your case was motivated by race? From your point of view, what are the most useful actions we can take to end systemic racism?
I mean, yeah, it was motivated by race. But racism is such an embedded thing in this society that people don't even call it racism anymore. It's just how it is. When an innocent black man is killed walking down the street, that's just how it is. When black woman is killed in her street, that's just how it is. You know, in my situation, you know, when you think about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, you know, shit, what am I complaining about? At least I got a trial. But, you know, the trial was a joke. I mean, it wasn't really a trial. All throughout my trial, Arturo, the courtroom remained empty. It was just my attorneys, the prosecutors, and the judge, basically, and the court reporter and the jury. But when it came time to pronounce the sentence, when it was time for the judge to sentence me to death, the whole courtroom was full of white people. It's like some kind of memo went out that told them, okay, we about to lynch a nigger. And everybody showed up. So racism is definitely involved in my case. But this is a racist country that we live in. So it's involved in everything. It's a cancer and it's metastasized to every part of the body. If I have close friends who have cancer and who have fought and won their battle against cancer, and some of the ways or some of the treatments that he underwent, is I think some of the same treatments that need to be applied to racism in this society. It need to be isolated. It need to be, eradicated. It need to be identified and eradicated. And so, yeah, racism exists, and the way that we get rid of it is to say that it exists, to acknowledge that it exists, because anything that you don't acknowledge, you can't change. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. So we're going to try to get through about 6 more minutes of questions, just so we leave 5 minutes left for Amy and Mary to speak to your book and your projects. That said,
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
If members of the audience want to stick around for a few minutes and we can get to some of the other questions, we'll do that as well, assuming that Keith is able to stick around as well. So Keith, we'll go on to the next question now. This one says, "Hi Keith, I am a friend of your friend, Greg Curry. He said to tell you that he sends his love and solidarity. I dearly hope the two of you can see each other again soon in a better place. I want to ask you what you imagine when you imagine freedom."
Yeah, first of all, tell Greg I send him my love and solidarity as well. He's one of my closest friends. Someone who also got caught up in this situation. He's a dear friend of mine. And unfortunately, he wasn't sentenced to death. He was given life without the possibility of parole. And after his trial was over with, he had one shot at an appeal, and that was it. It's almost better to be sentenced to death, and if you are lucky enough to get some good attorneys, you can at least exhaust your appeals. But Greg was unfortunate in that regard. But I'm hoping that if and when I receive release, that will trickle down. It will have to, because we all, one of the things that the state did, one of the mistakes that they made, they applied all the same strategy against all of us. So if one block fall, all of them will fall. I really believe that. So give my regards to Greg. As far as freedom, what do I feel what do I imagine that feel like? I don't really have to imagine. I'm free right now. I'm free right now. And, that doesn't mean I don't have fears, that I don't have worries. I was worried about whether or not I would be able to make it to the phone tonight. I've been told there was quite a few people would show up, and so I was real excited about making it here. But I had already been preparing for this occasion 2 weeks ago, so that was indication of my faith. And I believe that when we indicate to the universe that we are serious about our life, I think the universe responds and make it possible, clear a way for us. That's freedom to me. It's freedom when you can recognize life, when you can hear life when it's speaking to you. That's freedom to me. And just because you're walking around and you can go to Starbucks don't mean you are free. If you don't know what's going on in your own life, if you don't know how to get outside of these constructs that I mentioned earlier, then you are not free. If you think this somehow means something because you're white and I'm black, then you're not free. If you somehow think there's something wrong with this person because they don't identify with the same sex that you do, then you're not free. So that's what I'm saying. And freedom, achieving freedom is a hard walk. It's something that you got to constantly work at because you constantly fight against the people that want to keep you in chains, that want to use your life as cannon fodder for their own aims. And so being free is fighting that, and I'm fighting that. I'm doing it.
You have 1 minute remaining.
So, yeah, I'm free right now. Yeah.
Thanks for speaking to that, Keith.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Keith, if you're still on the line, maybe we can wait for you to switch and we can take one
Yeah,
more
I can
question.
call back. Yeah, I'll make one more call. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for using GTL.
And why don't we take the time now? Do you want to have Amy? Do you want to put up some of the information about call to action?
Amy, you're muted.
I'm unmuting myself.
Okay.
Sorry, I undid it, so I have to just click to the end. Okay. So thank you everybody who is on the call tonight, and this has just been awesome. I don't even have the words for it, but of course, all the time we are asked.
Amy, you're muted again.
Amy, yeah, we can't hear you.
She's saying to wait just a second.
Also simultaneously putting Keith into the call. So, there are some simple things, many of the things that you can do are free, and they just take a moment to do. In fact, Mary is going to put some things into the chat box with direct links. And we know not everybody is able to contribute money, but there are options that are not financial here. If you are able to give a donation towards the legal defense fund so that we can work on this final innocence claim, and we're going to be working on attracting attorneys, we would love and be so thankful for any gifts that you can make towards the campaign. We have a new petition, and if you can share it, and if you can just take a moment to copy and paste that into your Facebook or your Instagram or your Twitter or on email, that'd be great. And then also, social media.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Social media, it's a funny thing how once you get some support, it's like you earn the right for the attention of people who can maybe help in really, really big ways. And so the more we build our support on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, even if they seem like things that don't maybe individually inspire us all the time, but the idea that a lot of people are there showing support, showing you love, sends a message that there's some love, something here to love and pay attention to. So if you can jump onto your social media, even right now while we're sitting here, and search up Justice for Keith LaMar on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, Free Keith LaMar. And again, if you can share it and get your networks, because that's how it's like casting a net and letting it spread. And the more we grow this movement, the better it will be for Keith's campaign and fight. We have a couple of hashtags here. You can see Justice for Keith LaMar and Love is the Only Freedom. We've been using these for about a year. And the more we use that, the better our things get picked up. And so if you can do that, that's awesome. On the web page, anytime at the bottom of the page, you see a place to drop your email in. So if you can subscribe to our listserv, when something important is going on, we can communicate with you. That'd be wonderful. There's a link to Keith's book where you can order it. There's also a documentary on his website. All of this stuff can be done on his webpage. And there's also merchandise. All of these things go to benefit the Legal Defense Fund. I know someone asked about Condemned, whether it made a difference if it's an ebook or in a paperback that it's ordered. It does not matter. It's all going into the campaign. So anybody who has questions, there's also the email info@keithlamar.org. You can shoot any kind of message to us and we will be happy to respond to you. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Keith.
Thanks, Amy. And if this works for you, we can also share these resources on the document that will be following up the event. And as a reminder to everybody, we're going to stick around for a couple minutes to take some more questions. And Keith, if you're ready, I can give you the next one.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the next question says, thank you for your testimony. You said you are speaking our truth into the void. We are here listening to you. I intuit you have a rich spiritual life. What role has spirituality played, if any, in your perseverance and the development of your views? What helps you believe there is something greater for this world than poverty, prisons, and death? How do you understand God in your life?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. Not complicated, but it's not easy to sum it up. I believe in God. I don't necessarily consider myself a Christian or Muslim or adherent to any other organized religion. As I said, I had quite a few people come into my life along the way, guys who taught me how to meditate and taught me how to, tap into that higher thing inside myself, of which, we all have access to. And as I was saying, I feel life. I feel, when I was growing up, I was baptized twice in my life. Once when I was 13 and again when I was 18 years old. And when I came to prison, I practiced Islam for 2 years.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
And I don't want to say that either of those paths were pointless. They weren't. I think religion is like a map that if you commit yourself to it, that it would change the condition of your heart, and it lets you stay on the path that you will have an encounter with the Most High. I feel like I've had that encounter, and then once you have that encounter, I think your life is forever changed. In this situation that I'm in, there's a million reasons to doubt. But there's also a million reasons to have faith. I mean, I'm still alive. That's a fact. And when I think about everything that I've been through, how can I not believe in God? Jesus said, not I, but the Father that dwelleth within me that doeth the work. And so I believe that there's a Father inside of me. In fact, I know I have a higher self, without which I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. There's something inside of me that's guiding me through this difficult thing that I'm going through. I mean, I couldn't possibly do this by myself. But I don't want to be presumptuous and say it's this, that, or the third. I don't really, reach for it like that. I just accept it. But while we're speaking about God, I was talking to Amy the other day, and I said, isn't it funny that the same people who profess to be Christians, the same people who profess to be followers of Christ, are the same people right now in the capital of Ohio trying to debate on the various ways or alternatives to execution. They talking about the electric chair, the gas chamber, the firing squad, and never once did it occur to them to think about peace, to think about forgiveness, to think about redemption. I mean, they forget that Christ was executed. He wasn't the one doing the executing. So if you're following Christ, then you should start looking to an alternative to execution. and they have to lead, down the path of redemption. People have to be given the opportunity to redeem themselves. That's what God is all about, that we all sinners, if I can use that word.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
We all fall short, and learning how to meditate also taught me how to forgive myself, how to start over again, how to begin again, and so that's what I really hold on to. Even though I don't have a name for it, I know there's something inside of me that's guiding me, that represents the light in my life. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for speaking to that. Given that it's 8:33 now, I think we'll take this opportunity and your points to conclude. And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to conclude the event. And thanks again, Keith. This was incredibly
Thanks,
powerful.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to take a minute to thank you, Keith, and to thank, Amy and Mary and Arturo and Sanjana and all of the other people who, and Michelle, all of the other people who worked hard to make this possible. I want to remind you about all of the links that Amy and Mary put in the chat and on the slide. You can also go to the website and access all of this information. We recorded this event. And we will put it up on our YouTube channel for the Northwestern Prison Education Program. So it will be available, shortly for viewing. So if you have people in your community who are unable to make it to this event, they can view it through our website. We will be following up the event with an email where we'll include all of this information as well, in addition to the recording. Anyone else from the planning committee want to add any final words or? Okay, I just want to take this moment to thank you, Keith. You should have the last word. So if you want to say one final thing, and thank you so much.
I'll just follow up on what you said. I just want to thank everybody. Mary, I didn't get to hear your voice tonight, but thanks for all the work you put into making this possible. Arturo, Jennifer, of course, Amy, of course, and everybody who's listened. It means a lot to be able to bring forth the best in myself. As you might imagine, I don't get many opportunities in this situation to call on my higher self. So this has been a definite blessing tonight, something that I will hold on to and use as fuel to propel me forward. I have no idea how or when my story will end, obviously. They say they're going to kill me in a few years on the 16th of November 2023, but I think I may have something to say about that. And maybe some of you would join me in saying it, join me in standing up against this arbitrary practice of violence. And maybe y'all can help, remind these people that, Jesus.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
That Jesus, was about redemption and about forgiveness. He wasn't about executing. He was the one being executed. And so, I take that message out to people and, call people to the mat about these things, about these contradictions in what we do. And so, this is a humbling thing. I just can't put it into words. There's no way I can describe to you all how much this means to me and what it has caused me to feel today. And I'm just grateful and I'm humbled by it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. It's really mean a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Keith. And thank you to everyone. And please get involved in, all of the different ways that Amy and Mary, kind of put up on our screen. Thank you again, everyone. And thanks especially, Keith. Good night.
Thank you.
Right, good night.
Keith.
Good night, everybody.
You can unmute yourself and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, it's good to hear your voices. Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Watching over
care.
me. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate you.
I love you. This is Amy in Wisconsin. Love you, Bomani.
Hey, too sweet. Yeah. How you doing, honey?
You made me
Yeah.
cry a lot tonight. I'm really proud of you. Thank you so much.
I was crying a lot myself. Yeah. It's
Love
really
you.
something. Yeah. I love you too. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Keith. Okay, he must have left.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's still
Keith,
here.
this is
Yep,
Brother
Mark.
Mark.
Yeah.
He's still here.
This is
Who
Brother
was that?
Mark Clinton out of Chicago. I just want you to keep your head up. I'm a torture survivor. I already know what you're going through. Keep your head up.
Yeah.
Man, I'll be fighting for you from Chicago. We'll be out to Ohio, have attended some of these things on your behalf. So I clearly understand. Just keep your head up, man. You do got fighters out here.
I will. I definitely will. And you do the same. Be careful out there, brother. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Good night,
Thanks a
everyone.
lot, Jennifer.
People are just hanging out. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Are you calling back? We're going to just jump on with the core team after this, okay?
Okay,
All
everyone.
right, I'll call back
goodbye.
one more time. I'll try.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for using GPL.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, do you want us to go to that other link, or do you want to just stay here once everybody hangs out?
Yeah, we can just stay here. That might just be easier. Michelle,
Okay.
Amy just wanted to.
Yeah, I'll start.
Amy just wanted
I'll start.
Well, and not necessarily even with him here. I just, wanted to
debrief.
Connect. Yeah, just thank you. And
Yeah. Amy, do you want me to unmute you so that you can hang up the phone, or?
I'll just stay on it because if he does call, then he can listen in.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Do you want
you know what I
Mary?
mean? And
Should we tell Mary? Because I sent her that other link.
Oh, yeah.
I
can
sent
text her
her
real quick.
in the
I'll
chat.
text her.
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
because I sent her my Zoom link because we had talked about getting together.
Yep.
Jennifer, do you want us to stay on for this part?
Yes, if you'd like to debrief, we
Yeah,
really
sure,
just
of
wanna talk
course.
about how things went and yeah, for sure.
Of course, I just didn't want to impose.
I don't know why people are in the waiting room. I don't know.
I'm doing that. I don't want to hang up on someone in case
Oh,
I
I
accidentally
see.
pick out the wrong person. So I'm just moving them to the waiting room.
I see. Okay.
And
Okay. I see. That's helpful. Thank you, Michelle.
yeah.
And then Amy, you're contacting Mary, right?
Okay, so I have Keith here too with us. And now it's just us. You're
Almost,
on Wang
one
is
more.
still there. I don't-
Okay.
And
Now it's just
I
Jennifer,
think Mary's coming
Michelle.
back.
So I thought it went exceptionally well, Amy and Keith. I don't think that the event could have gone any better. I mean, really, the sound quality was incredible. Keith, you were so compelling and so articulate and so substantive, and there was so much, I just was so moving and beautiful. And I thought the slides were perfect, Amy. They went so well with Keith's story. I just thought it really made the story come alive. I think it just went exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's amazing. I get up fairly early in the morning, 1 and 2 o'clock, because that's the quietest time here in where I am. And I get to meditate, I get to read, I get to, prepare myself for the day ahead. And so I've been up since 2 o'clock this morning, and I haven't felt sleepy at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But now that it's over, it's all coming washing down over me. I'm sitting here, and I feel real peaceful, real peaceful, very peaceful.
You should. I think it was a fantastic event. Amy, do you have any thoughts about?
I just wanted to say thank you. You don't really get to do it with all the people there, but I know how much work you put in, and just, managing that huge influx, Michelle and Jennifer at the end there. And
This call is
you know.
originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I know that the cap was like you had a limit of how many people could come, but do we know how many people actually ended up being here tonight?
I think it was about 200, maybe, like at the
Oh, really?
somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think at its peak, it was over 200. I think that like maybe 220 or something like that at its, at its peak. And so I think that, and of course we'll have a recording of the event. Oh, I think we're still recording this, Michelle, you should stop the recording. I mean, we didn't say anything that was problematic anyway, so